Hello ladies and gentlemen, blah blah blah. We're back. And we ran into a bug in the last episode. Let's review it quickly here. Okay, let's say we have $100 to start. Okay, so far, tip is $15. That's fine. Let's change it to 20%. Click out of it. Tip is $20. That's fine. Let's change it to 25%. Big tip. It's still fine. Okay, let's click on it. Now let's not change it at all. Let's leave it at 25%. Click out of it. Okay. Now click out of this thing. Oh, again, remember when you click out of this, you trigger the calculate grand total code. Boom. Tip jumped up to $25 or $100. In other words, it assumed it's 25 here and not 25% and multiplied that by 100. Okay, let's figure out why the heck that is. We're going to learn a very valuable tool for debugging, and it is a method. So go to the onProgressChanged method, find the line where we divide 2% value by 100, and type this. Okay, System.out.println, and then in here we have an argument. What this does is it prints a line in the logcat of the debug perspective, and it prints one of these. Where is it? It prints a System.out line in green text. So that's what we wanted to do. So then we can. Every time this line before it runs, 2% equals 2% value divided by 100, then this line will run, and when this line runs, we can check in here to make sure that it does run, and it should give us this message if it does run. Let's put some more messages in our code. Let's go to the onFocusChange. And right here, when we set the progress, above it, put a message that says, we're about to change the tip, and I like to use capital letters since they're easy to notice in the logcat. And down here we put, we have just changed the tip. Okay, so what this means, okay, so we already know that the bug appears to have something to do with this edit text here, as well as the tip. And it has something to do with not dividing by 100 when we're supposed to. So this is what we did right before. So we went into the onFocusChange method for the tip percent. And what should happen is we'll set the value of 2% to whatever this is. So say this is 15% and 15. We click out. The first thing that should happen is it sets 2% to 15. And then, you know, this thing to check if it's bigger than 50. Next, it'll print a line saying we're about to change the tip, and then it'll change the slider to 15, and then it'll jump all the way down here and it'll set the tip percent to whatever the progress was. Again, it'll be 15, and then it'll set the text properly, and then it'll do the tip percent is equal to the tip percent divided by 100, so turn 15 into 0.15, which is what we want. And then we'll do another message that says we just adjusted the tip properly. In other words, we divided by 100. And then it'll run through and update everything using 0.15 instead of 15. And it'll calculate the grand total. Then once this is done, again, once you reach this line, it'll jump down to this line, do all this stuff down here. And finally, we get back to here and we print one more message, and that message is we have just changed the tip. So every time we change the tip, we should have 3 messages in a row in the logcat. So let's go to the debug perspective, launch our app, and see how this works. You'll see these lines here that says skipped 30 frames. Don't worry about that. That's more for people who use animation. And even then, it usually has more to do with the fact that the AVD is really slow as opposed to actually like bad coding. Okay, here it goes again. Let's use 100 again. Okay, click on here. Let's change it to 20%. click out. Click in. Let's change it to 25%. Click out. Again, the tip is still just fine, calculated properly. Click in, 30%, click out. Still, so far so good. Look in here. We're about to change the tip. We adjusted the tip properly. We have changed the tip. About to change, adjusted, changed. About to change, adjusted, changed. So everything is working normally, as expected. Now click on this. Do not click, or do not edit this. Leave it at 30%. And then click out. Doesn't really matter where. And then click out of the $100 here to update. And boom, $3,000. Let's look in and see what happened. We're about to change the tip. We have changed the tip. We're missing the middle line. We adjusted the tip properly. That line did not show up. It did not get printed for some reason. In other words, we got to this line just fine. We got to this line just fine. And then we got to this line just fine. But we never got... Oh, I shouldn't be deleting these, sorry. We never got to this second line at all. So now we have to think, why is it that we never reached this line? Well, and again, this line confirms that we did divide it by 100. So since we did not reach this line, it means we also did not reach this line that divided it by 100, and thus we have a bug. So why did we not reach this line? Well, this line always runs when onProgress change runs, and if the seek bar is tip slider. We already know that seek bar is always tip slider, so that's not the issue. So it must be onProgress changed is not being run, because if it was run, we would get this. So why is onProgress changed not being run? Let's go back here. OnProgress changed is run every time we change the progress of tip slider. Okay. Now, when we use tip slider.setProgress, we're obviously changing the slider or the progress of tip slider. However, when we leave it at whatever it was before, and then we click out without editing it, we're setting. So say we have 26% right here, and then we don't edit it. We're leaving it at 26%. When we get to the set progress line here, it will set the progress to 26 again, but it was already at 26. So since the progress did not change, down here, the onProgress change method did not execute. This method only executes when the progress is changed. If you set the progress to what it already is, then you're not changing the progress, and so that code down there does not run. I have an infographic on my website that may be helpful for this. Let's me find it. It's all the way down here. Okay, so this is what normally happens. Let's say we have the tip is 15%, and the user changes it to 20%. And then he clicks out of it, and that triggers onFocus change. OnFocus change sets tip percent value to 20. Which it does right here. And then it sets tip slider's progress to 20, which it does right here. And then this triggers onProgress change, which among other things sets tip percent to 0.2. So since it used to be 15 and we're setting it to 20, the progress changed, all this stuff happens, including the part where we divide by 100. Now, sometimes the user will, okay, let's say it's 15%. The user clicks 10%, but he does not edit it. He leaves it at 15%, clicks out, triggers onFocus change. When he triggers onFocus change, the tip percent value is set to 15. It was already 15, but we set it to 15 again. And then we set tip slider's progress to 15. Again, tip slider was already at 15, and we're setting it to 15 again. Since tip slider's progress was already 15, onProgress change does not get triggered. And since it does not get triggered, we never get to the line where we divide tip percent value by 100. And that's where the bug comes from. Suddenly we have tip percent value that's a whole number and not a percentage, and that gets used in calculations later on. And that's why we have this huge number right here for the tip. So let's fix it. Now that we know what the problem is, we can go ahead. Oh, I'll delete it at the end of the video. We'll leave them here, the System.println things here for now. Okay, so set the progress. Let's do it this way. When they set the progress to something that is the same as what it already was, we know that we're not dividing by 100. So that means that the tip percent value must be bigger than 0.5. Because if it was less than 0.5, then it must have run the onProgress change stuff. So if it didn't run the stuff, it would be greater than 0.5. Where is it? Okay, so if it is greater than 0.5, then we know we have to manually set tip% value to itself divided by 100, because we never did that. We never did that with set progress. So with this little check here, we should have solved all our problems. Now, when we set progress, if it did change the progress, it'll divide by 100, and now, even if we didn't change the progress and it just jumps to this next line, it'll notice that tip% value is bigger than 0.5, which should be the highest it could possibly get because the highest is 50, and it'll set it equal to itself divided by 100. Hopefully that makes perfect sense. If not, you can watch the video again or view my website with the written version of the tutorial. But anyway, let's make sure everything is working. 100, 15. Let's leave it at 15. Click out of it. Click in, click out, click in, click out. We're not editing the tip, and yet the tip stays at $15. Let's test a different number. 200, click in, out, in, out, in, out without changing the tip, and we continue to not see the bug. So it looks like we have squashed the bug. We now have a pretty well working tip calculator. Pretty much everything works now except for the tax, which we'll start working on in the next video. But yeah, that's how we solve the bug. Now that we have the bug gone, we can go ahead and delete all the System.out.println lines. You can leave them in, they don't do anything in terms of what the end user sees. They just make your code a little bit messier. And yeah, and if we actually went back to the debugging and the logcat, we'll notice that every time, oops, oh, I don't know, I guess, oh yeah, never mind, that doesn't help, but anyway, yeah, so we solved the bug and we learned a valuable tool in debugging, and that is the System.out.println method. You use it to keep track of what code your computer is running and what code it's skipping by having a visual output in the debug logcat perspective. So yeah, that's it. We solved the bug. End of the episode. I'll see you guys in the next one.